Hello, and welcome to another video. In today's video, we are going to be taking a look at how to sharpen an axe whilst you're out in the field. There's quite a lot of videos on YouTube already on how to sharpen an axe, but they seem to focus on using large bench stones or whetstones when you're at home. And whilst the principle is largely the same, I'm going to go through how to sharpen your axe when you're out here in the woods if it needs doing. So my axe, it's not the bluntest axe in the world at the minute, but it does need a little bit of work and it needs a little bit of cleaning up. It's got damp over the winter months, so there's a little bit of rust forming on there. So hopefully we're going to get this nice and cleaned up today. So first of all, let's take a look at the equipment that we're going to actually use to sharpen this axe when we're out in the field. So the equipment we're going to use is fairly basic. First of all, and the thing that's going to do the bulk of the work, is this Brook grinding stone, axe puck type thing. So it's a double-sided stone, so it's got a fine side and it's got a coarse side, and it's in this really nice silicone cover. It can be completely taken out if you want. Oh, managed to get a bit of rust in there, must have put it back in while it was wet. No issue there. And we're going to use this today because it's a little bit better to carry than a large whetstone or bench stone, and I prefer using this over my CC4 on the axe because it keeps my fingers well away from the edge of the from the cutting edge of the axe, so I don't want to be cutting myself. I have cut myself sharpening using my little CC4 stone before, and I much prefer this, so I'll show you how you can keep your fingers away. And then also, if I'm carrying an axe, I've also started carrying these little paddle strops now. So these ones were made by Ben Orford. You could probably make your own, but I really like Ben Orford stuff, so I grabbed a couple of these. One of them just has leather, which has some honing compound on it. The same compound that I've used in my knife sharpening video. And we've got some really super fine wet and dry paper. I think this is a 7000 grit paper, and that just gives it a really nice polish. And the combination of these things will give your axe a razor sharp, shaving sharp cutting edge if they're used correctly. So let's have a look at how we're actually going to use these. The first thing that I want to be doing is just soaking my whetstone in a little bit of water. So I'm just using my cooking pot, which I'd have with me anyway, and some of my water. I'm going to put the lid and the case of the stone just next to it so I don't lose them, and just start this soaking. Like so, just covering the stone over in there. And whilst that's soaking in, I just like to make myself a little cup of coffee and give it a chance to really soak some of that water up. With my coffee made and my puck now soaking, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this permanent marker just to colour the edge of this knife. Now, generally I don't do this anymore because I've gotten pretty good at sharpening, and you can figure it all out by the sound once you get a bit more used to it. But if you're new to sharpening this and you don't really know how to do it, which I'm guessing is the case if you're here watching the video, this can be really helpful for getting the angle of your puck correct. This is a convex bevel, which I'll try and show you a little later if I can get the camera to focus on it, and we have to change the angle of it quite a lot, so colouring it can be very, very useful. So I'm just going to colour in the whole cutting edge right to the edge, and the idea here is as I'm sharpening and grinding with the puck, I'll be aiming to take off this ink, and if the ink's coming off, then I'm in the right place. And if there's ink left behind, I'm going to do this on both sides. If there's ink left behind, it basically shows me that I'm missing a particular angle or a particular section of the blade. So it's a really, really good little technique. Very, very useful. So that's that coloured in. Puck should be nice and soaked now, so we can get to actually sharpening this. Ready to start sharpening now. I've got my puck out of the water and put it back in its silicone case. Now I like to start on kind of this side of the axe with the handle facing up towards my shoulder. I find it helps to just get me into the rhythm, because when we turn it round to do the other side, it does start to get a little bit difficult. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at this side of the cutting edge. So when we're sharpening an axe, because it has this convex bevel, we need to be working the whole cutting edge, the whole sort of bright side of it, the polished side of it. And I'm going to start at the thickest end. We need to be removing metal from the whole lot. Otherwise, over time, this edge starts to move back and we just end up with a very, very rounded kind of cutting edge. So I'm going to go ahead and start that. And I'm just making circular motions. It's not the flat motions that we make with the Scandi grind knife. And I'm working backwards and forwards with that. So you can hopefully make out there on the video that that ink that I put on has started to come off. And as I'm making these circular motions, I'm there's less pressure on the upwards and then a bit more on the down. And I'm going to do a few passes there. And as I do it, now I've done a few passes here, taking off plenty of metal. And I'm going to start rolling this puck in this kind of movement to bring it to the edge. Nice and slow and controlled. And the sound there, if the microphone's picking up as well as I hope it is, should be changing. So now I'm in the middle of that bright edge. I'm still not quite on the edge of it. And I'm just going to repeat this for quite a few minutes, a couple of minutes. And then at this point here, you'll really hear that sound change as I really pitch this over onto its edge. This is where you have to be careful. This is where it gets difficult. If I roll this too far round, it's going to start rolling the edge round to the side and create a lot of work and really start to blunt the axe. So I've got a little bit of a ding in the axe at the top here. I do find the top and the bottom to be the most challenging bits to do, especially on a cold day like today. Now pay attention to the position of my fingers as well. This is why I like these pucks. I'm not holding the stone itself, I'm holding it in the silicone case, so my fingers are really far away from that cutting edge the whole time. What you've got to be careful of is catching like this. As it gets sharper, you're going to cut yourself really easily. So I'm keeping my fingers on the back, and that's allowing me to apply a little bit more pressure. Spending a bit more time on the actual sort of cutting edge, like so, and that side should now be done for the course. It's as simple as that. You can see that all that ink is missing. It's still on the other side. So now I'm going to change my position to the other side of this axe, and it can get a little tricky. You've got to find somewhere that's comfortable for you. My positioning for this changes pretty much every time I do it. So for today, I think I'm going to rest against my knee here. We'll see how we get on with that. And then just repeat that same process, the same amount of time on the other side. All the time, I'm just listening for that change in sound and keeping the pressure on. These Gransfors axes, the steel is very hard, so you do need to apply quite a bit of pressure on them. Okay, change my position again, not happy with that. I'm going to do it, so I'm going to balance it on the floor and look straight down. Looking straight down at it can be pretty helpful as well, because you can really see where the angle of the stone is set to. Okay, a bit more attention at the top here, that ding out. So if you have got any of these little notches or dints in it, they're the bits that you really want to be paying attention to. All the time, fingers around the back, around the side of this puck, so that I'm not going to catch them on that cutting edge. Okay, so now you can see now I've pretty much removed all of that ink from both sides, and I'm ready, camera will stay focused, to move on to the other side of the sharpening stone. So for this fine side of the puck, all I'm going to do is take it out, turn it around, stick it back into the silicone case. Some people like to keep the coarse side on the coarse side of the these are labelled, so it's fine side and coarse side. For me, I just pay attention to what the stone looks like. I'm not going to pay attention to this, because if I'm a bit hungry, a bit tired, or it's a bit dark, I might make a mistake and be using the stone backwards. So I just flip it over and look for the dots or the colour of it. And the process for this side is exactly the same, so you could recolour it if you wanted to, if you're still getting used to it. And then it's still that circular motion. You'll hear a difference in the sound. And this time I'm just applying a little bit more pressure onto it, because I really want to get this honed and polished and fine. And again, as I come down, I'm applying more pressure and bringing the pressure off as I come up. And that is difficult to show because it's a fine little movement in my hand, and it does take a little bit of practice as you're doing it. And with the fine side, I'm focusing more on the sort of cutting edge of the axe there, but still rolling it back onto that wider cheek of the bright edge. I tend, with the finer side, to spend a little bit more time doing it. On a cold day like today, your hands do get crampy, and that is a point worth mentioning. If your hands are getting tired, give it a minute, because that's when you'll start making mistakes. I'm okay, I'm going to keep going. This side, really focusing on that cutting edge. The slurry, yeah, that's looking okay. A little bit more work down here to do. So one thing that you'll find when you're using the finer edges, you're starting to work out those deeper scratches made by the coarser side. And I point on the Gransfors puck as well. The reason I prefer this one is I do have a Lansky one, which is really good. It's just a little bit too coarse. I prefer this because it's much finer. So I'm going to move back to the other side now, working here. And again, it's just this movement, kind of rolling it backwards and forwards, and on the fine side, focusing on that cutting edge. Check that your puck is still kind of wet. This needs a touch more water in it, so I'm just going to dip it in the pot. There you go. And kind of what I'm doing here as well is I'm applying a little bit of pressure on the head here and just bracing that handle against my neck so that it's not moving around. I don't want this axe to be like flopping around while I'm doing this. Should be fairly done. Okay, so just as a quick side note, I am going to demonstrate something else. So if you've seen my video on how to sharpen a knife in the field, you'll know that I use this kit, and this kit comes everywhere with me. It actually usually lives in this bag here, but not today for some reason. Now you can use this exact same kit for sharpening your axe. There's no reason not to. No real reason not to, you know. The reason that I don't, I'll just show you now. So it works quite well, but you've got to be really careful, because if you make a little bit of a mistake whilst you're doing this, your fingers are so much closer to that cutting edge. But it can be nice to just give that top edge a little bit of a polish, get it really fine. You can apply a touch more pressure with it on the back there. Just see my fingers are so much closer to that cutting edge, so you've got to be so much more aware if you're using this kit. But this kit works just as well as the puck, so if you don't want to be carrying a puck, there's nothing to stop you using this. See, it works just as well. I do find it's a little bit harder to set the edge on it, to set the angle, sorry. The other thing to be aware of with this is you want to be careful not to be getting confused and using it like a knife and pulling back. Because it's that convex edge, you've really got to be doing these circular motions, otherwise you're just going to ruin the edge of your axe. And I do have to say, I find the bottom, the kind of beard of the axe, to be the hardest bit to get, so I'm just going to focus on that a little touch more on this here, and a little touch more, try and keep it in the shot for you, down here. Okay. Careful not to overwork that edge. Alright, so you can see now that is pretty well honed. Keep it on this side so you can see, but it's still not that fine working edge that we want. So I'm now going to move on to the sandpaper and strop. Stropping, I'm going to start with some of this wet and dry sandpaper, which is, I believe, 7,000 or 5,000 grit, usually says on the back. Let me check. Oh no, this is 1,200. And I'll use some of the other stuff as well. And what this does two things. It polishes some of those scratches out of there, and it really starts to hone the edge. And I like to use these paddle strops on the axe because it means that I can really get some pressure behind it, because I've got that leverage there. But just like with a knife, for this now, I'm going to be, instead of this circular movement, I might do a bit of the circular movement on the cheek there, but I'm actually going to be pushing out towards the edge. And with these being long as well, we can really easily set the angle like this. If we put it on the cheek here and bring it round, it gives us the correct angle for really getting that wide part of that cutting edge. And also, I spend quite a bit of time on this bit because I like it to look nice and polished, shiny and bright. I think, even though it's just an aesthetic, paying attention to maintaining the way your kit looks just allows you and gives you the focus to pay attention to those details, because if you're keeping it looking good, it's probably being looked after and it's going to stay working good. So again, just as before, I'm polishing that thick edge up, and then in a moment I'll move around and work on that finer cutting edge. You can really apply quite a bit of pressure on this. Again, being careful not to push too far on that edge. Don't want to bring it right round like this, because I'll be rolling the edge around and inhibiting its cutting ability. Inhibiting, that's a posh word. So I'm going to give this just a little bit of a polish on this side like so. Get it nice and shiny. I don't think I'm going to get a mirror edge today, that makes me sad. But we'll see what we can do. Oh no, I might do. Okay, so now I'm going to set that angle and really work on that cutting edge. Again, quite a bit of pressure. Use as much of the length of this paddle as I can to maximise the amount of work that I'm putting in, the amount of, I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's minimising the amount of work that I've got to do by maximising the amount of sandpaper I'm actually using to do this. Flip it over, get some of that fresher stuff on. Then again on the same side, on the other side. I should probably just polish that cheek up a little bit. And it's a bit easier to do this bit as well. You can move the axe around a little bit more to see where you're working. Haven't quite got this ding out the top of it, but that's going to be okay for today. That's a job for back at home, I think, with a file. Don't carry a file around with me because it's just too heavy. But I think if I was out for a prolonged period of time, I probably would. So, done a bit of work with that now. I'm just going to demonstrate with the CC4 again, if that's what you're using, if that's what you've got. So I'm going to put the stone inside the paper and then just use it in pretty much exactly the same way. Again, being careful not to catch my fingers on that cutting edge. It's a little bit less of a risk at this point because I'm pushing away from the cutting edge. But the downside to this is I've not got the same amount of length or leverage on this. So that's pretty much it for the sandpaper. That should be more than enough. I can feel now that that is starting to get crazy sharp on the edge there just by gently running my finger on it. And at this point it really starts to show up these little dings and notches you've got, so you can be aware of them for when you get home. But now I've got my strop, my leather strop, which is preloaded with honing compound. And again, it's the same movement, really putting a bit of pressure on there, and this gives it a real fine edge. So here we go. This is the test that we have to do with a knife or axe to see if it's sharp enough. Let's get myself right in the light there if I can. Might be a little bit blown out. Oh, get my sleeves out of the way. So I don't recommend doing this with an axe because it is a little bit dangerous and a little bit dumb, but just to give you an idea of how sharp this has got, I can shave with it, like so. One nice ball patch on my arm there. In truth, I actually think I could have got this sharper today. You can see we've got a nice shiny bright edge on there on both sides. So there you go, folks. That is how I sharpen my axe in the field. Different people do it in slightly different ways. Find what works for you. Don't go out and buy the really expensive kit straight away. Learn how to do it first. And on that note, I would say if you've never sharpened an axe before, don't go out and buy a really expensive axe. They are expensive. These Gransfors axes are coming in at about sort of 150, 170 pounds at the minute, so they're pretty expensive. If you get this wrong, you can damage the edge of it. I found that out the hard way with my wildlife hatchet, which is now I'm constantly have to work it to re-grind the edge onto it. So get yourself a nice cheap axe from somewhere, practice sharpening it. If you can get a razor sharp edge on a cheap axe, you're then ready to move on to a more expensive one. I would say go for the Gransfors puck if you're going to get one. It's about £30 and it's perfect. It really does the job and you're never going to have to replace that. So yeah, there you go. It's fairly simple and straightforward to do. I hope this tutorial's been good. It's been pretty tricky to film it and get the angles and stuff right, and it's also freezing cold today, and it's difficult to operate my camera and tripod with cold hands. So yeah, I hope it's been good for you. If you've enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, please consider supporting me on Patreon, which will allow me to get things that are easier to use in the cold. And some of the equipment we've used in this video is available on my Amazon storefront, so I found the cheapest stuff for you on there. You pay the same price for it and I get a little bit of the money as well, which again will go back into the channel. So as always, thank you all for watching, take care, and I'll see you all in the next video, which will be a kit recommendation of a very nice rucksack. Bye for now.